the last judgment and Babylon destroyed, showing that at this day all the predictions of the book of Revelation have been fulfilled, drawn from things heard and seen. Judgment Day does not mean the end of the world. If people have no knowledge of the word's spiritual meaning, they cannot help but understand the last judgment to mean the end of everything visible to the eye in this world, since it says that at that time both heaven and earth will pass away and that God will create a new heaven and a new earth. They find further support for this interpretation in the fact that it says all people will then rise from their graves and that the good will then be separated from the evil, and so on. Matthew 25:31, 46, 1 Thessalonians 4:15, 17, Revelation 20:11, 15. That, however, is what a literal reading of the word says, because the literal meaning of the word is earthly and resides on the lowest level of the divine design, though even there absolutely everything contains some spiritual meaning. As a result, people who understand the word only in its literal meaning can be led to various conclusions, as has indeed happened throughout the Christian world, resulting in any number of heresies, for each of which people find biblical support. Still, since no one has as yet realized that there is spiritual meaning throughout the word and in every detail, or has even realized what spiritual meaning is, people who have held this opinion of the last judgment are to be forgiven. However, let them now know that the heavens we see above us are not going to pass away, and neither is this earth that we are living on. No, both of them are going to survive. And let them now know that the new heaven and new earth mean a new church both in heaven and on earth. I speak of a new church in heaven since there is a church there just as there is on earth, because the word and sermons exist in heaven as on earth and angels have a divine worship that is similar to ours. The difference, though, is that everything there is in a more perfected state because it exists in a spiritual world rather than an earthly one. So all the people there are spiritual people and not earthly, the way they were in this world. On this subject, see my book about heaven, especially where it discusses our union with heaven through the word and deals with divine worship in heaven. The following are some passages in the word where it speaks of the end of heaven and earth. Lift up your eyes to heaven and look on the earth beneath. The heavens will vanish away like smoke and the earth will grow old like a garment. Isaiah 51:6. Behold, I am going to create new heavens and a new earth, and the former ones will not be remembered. Isaiah 65:17. I will make new heavens and a new earth. Isaiah 66:22. The stars of heaven fell to the earth, and heaven receded like a scroll that is rolled up. Revelation 6:13, 14. I saw a great throne and the one who sat on it, from whose face earth and heaven fled away. And no place was found for them. Revelation 20:11. I saw a new heaven and a new earth, the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Revelation 21:1. In these passages the new heaven does not mean the sky that we see with our eyes but heaven itself, where humankind is gathered in. Ever since the beginning of the Christian Church a heaven has been gathered from the whole of humankind. The people in it were not angels, though, but spirits, one of various religions. This is the heaven meant by the first heaven that would pass away. There will be further detail about their situation in what follows. I mention it here only so that the reader may know what is meant by the first heaven that would pass away. Anyone who thinks with any rational enlightenment can perceive that this is not referring to the sky that has stars in it, the vast firmament of creation, but to heaven spiritually understood, where angels and spirits live. Until now, people have not realized that a new earth means a new church on earth, for the simple reason that they have thought earth in the word means earth, when in fact it means the church. In a non-spiritual sense it does mean the earth, but spiritually understood it means the church. This is because if we are focused on the spiritual meaning, that is, if we ourselves are as spiritual as angels, when it says earth in the word, we do not understand it to mean the earth itself but the people who live on it and their worship of God. That is why earth means the church. On this point see the references from Secrets of Heaven cited in the footnote. I would like to cite a few passages from the word here that may offer some help in understanding that earth means the church. The floodgates from on high are open and the foundations of the earth are shaken. The earth is violently broken, the earth is shaken exceedingly. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard, it totters like a hut, and its transgression is heavy upon it. Isaiah 2400 hours 18, 19, 20. I will render a human more rare than pure gold. Because of this I will violently move heaven, and the earth will be moved from its place, in the day of the raging of Jehovah's anger. Isaiah 13:12, 13. The earth quaked before him, and the heavens trembled, the sun and the moon were darkened, and the stars withheld their light. Joel 2:10. The earth shook and trembled, and the foundations of the mountains quaked and were shaken. Psalms 18:7, 8. There are many other such passages. Further, in the spiritual meaning of the word, to create means to form, to set up, and to regenerate, so creating a new heaven and a new earth means establishing a new church in heaven and on earth. You can see this from the following passages. A people yet to be created will praise Jah. Psalms 102:18. You send out your spirit, and they are created, you renew the face 3 of the earth. Psalms 104:30. Thus says Jehovah, who is your creator, O Jacob, and your maker, O Israel, I have redeemed you and called you by your name. You are mine. For my glory I have created, I have formed, and I have made all those who are called by my name. Isaiah 43:1, 7. There are other such passages as well. This is why our own individual new creation is our reformation, because we become new and spiritual rather than earthly, and that is why a new creation is someone who has been reformed. On the spiritual meaning of the word, see my booklet The White Horse described in Revelation. The reproduction of humankind on earth will never cease. People who have adopted the belief that the last judgment will entail the destruction of everything in the heavens and on earth, and that a new heaven and a new earth will come into being in their stead, also believe, because it logically follows, that the reproduction and successive generations of humankind will come to an end after that. They think that all this will be over and humanity will then be in a different state than before. However, as explained in the preceding chapter, the day of the last judgment does not mean the destruction of the world. It follows, then, that humankind is in fact going to continue and its reproduction will not cease. Many points provide support for the idea that the reproduction of humankind is going to continue forever. Some of these have been presented in my book about heaven. The following points are the most relevant. Humankind is the foundation on which heaven rests. Humankind is the seedbed of heaven. The full extent of heaven, which exists for the Sarche of angels, is so vast that it cannot be filled to eternity. So far, heaven is made up of relatively few people. Heaven's perfection increases as the number of its inhabitants increases. And every divine work aims at what is infinite and eternal. Humankind is the foundation on which heaven rests. This is because humankind was created last, and what is created last serves as a base for all the higher things that preceded it. Creation began from the highest or inmost things because it began from the divine, and it proceeded to the last or outermost things, and there it came to rest. The outermost level of creation is the physical world, including our globe of lands and seas and everything on it. Once all this was finished, then humanity was created, and into humanity was gathered every level of the divine design from first to last. Things on the first level of that design were incorporated into what is inmost in us, and things on the outermost level were incorporated into what is outermost in us. The result is that we have been made embodiments of the divine design. This is why everything within and about us is as much from heaven as it is from this world. From heaven we get the contents of our minds, and from the world we get the contents of our bodies. That is, things from heaven flow into our thoughts and feelings and cause them to take shape depending on how those things are received by our spirit, while things of this earth flow into our sensations and feelings of pleasure and cause them to take shape depending on how those things are received by our body, although only in a way that is adapted to suit the thoughts and feelings of our spirit. For material in support of this, see several relevant points in Heaven and Hell, particularly that the whole heaven, grasped as a single entity, reflects a single individual, and the same can be said for each community in the heavens. Therefore every angel is in perfect human form, and this is because of the Lord's divine human nature. There is more in the chapters on the correspondence of everything in heaven with everything in the human being, on the correspondence of everything in heaven with everything earthly, and on heaven's form. As this design of creation shows, there is such an unbroken connection between things first and last that when we have both in view they make a single whole in which what is prior cannot be separated from what is subsequent, exactly as a cause cannot be separated from its effect. By the same token, the spiritual world cannot be separated from the earthly world or the latter from the former. So the heaven of angels cannot be separated from humankind or humankind from the heaven of angels. Therefore the Lord has provided that each does work that is of benefit to the other, the heaven of angels to humankind and humankind to the heaven of angels. That is why, even though the dwelling places of angels are in heaven and appear to be at a remove from the dwellings where we live, the angels are still right with us, in our feelings for what is good and what is true. Our seeming to be separate from them is only a matter of outward appearance, as you may conclude from the chapter in Heaven and Hell that deals with space in heaven. As for the dwellings of angels being right with us in our feelings for what is good and what is true, that is the intent of the Lord's words: those who love me will keep my word, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make a home with them. John 14:23. What is said of the Father and the Lord in this verse also includes heaven, because wherever the Lord is, heaven is there. In fact, it is the divine nature emanating from the Lord that makes heaven, as you can see in Heaven and Hell 7:12, 116, 125. See also these words of the Lord: the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, dwells among you and is in you. John 14:16. 17. The Comforter is the divine truth that emanates from the Lord. This is why the Comforter is also called the Spirit of Truth. And divine truth constitutes heaven and also constitutes the angels, because they are receptive to it. On the fact that the divine nature emanating from the Lord is divine truth and that this is what makes the heaven of angels, see Heaven and Hell 126, 140. This is also the meaning of the Lord's words: the kingdom of God is within you, Luke 17:21. The kingdom of God is the divine goodness and divine truth in which the angels live. The presence of angels and spirits with us and in our feelings is something I have been granted to see thousands of times from their presence and dwelling with me. However, the angels and spirits do not know which people they are with, and the people do not know which angels and spirits they are living among. Only the Lord knows and arranges this. In a word, in heaven all feelings about things that are good and true extend outward, so people there who share similar feelings communicate with one another and are connected. In hell all feelings about things that are evil and false extend outward, so people there who share similar feelings communicate with one another and are connected. Feelings in the world of spirits extend outward very much in the way sight in our earthly world extends outward. The modes of communication are very much alike in the two places, but with the difference that in this world we see objects, while in the spiritual world we see angelic communities. We can see from this that the connection between the heaven of angels and humankind is such that each depends on the other, and that without humankind, the heaven of angels would be like a house without a foundation. This is because heaven is completed in humankind and rests on it. The same holds true in each of us as individuals. Our thinking and our willing, which are spiritual, flow down into our sensations and actions, which are earthly, and are completed and take on a permanence there. If we did not have these latter functions as well, if we lacked these sensations and actions at our outermost boundaries, the thoughts and feelings of our spirits would dissipate like things that had no defined outlet or foundation. On this principle, when we make the transition from the earthly world to the spiritual world, which happens when we die, since we are then spirits, we no longer depend on our individual base but on a communal base, which is humankind.